The morning of March 24th, 2025, dawned crisp and clear over the manicured campus of Palm Beach Atlantic University, a private Christian college nestled along the shimmering intracoastal waterway in South Florida. The sun glinted off the white stucco buildings, their red-tiled roofs glowing warmly against the backdrop of swaying palm trees. Students crisscrossed the quad, clutching coffee cups and backpacks, their voices a low hum of chatter about upcoming midterms and weekend plans. It was an ordinary Monday in every way, except for what was about to unfold in room 2040 of the Humanities building, where a storm was brewing that would soon ripple far beyond the classroom walls. Inside the lecture hall, Barron Trump, the youngest son of former President Donald Trump, sat near the back, his lanky 6'7" frame folded into a desk that seemed too small for him. At 19, Barron was a freshman, enrolled under a low profile to study business and political science. His presence on campus was an open secret, his sharp features, inherited from his mother Melania, and his quiet, reserved demeanor made him hard to miss. But he'd kept his head down, focusing on his studies rather than the legacy of his family name. Today, he wore a simple navy polo and jeans, his blonde hair neatly combed, a notebook open in front of him as he jotted notes in precise, angular handwriting. The class introduction to political theory was supposed to be a straightforward survey of ideologies, from Plato to Marx, but the professor had other plans. Dr. Vanessa Hargrove, a wiry woman in her mid-40s with a shock of dyed purple hair and a perpetual smirk, stood at the front of the room, her voice sharp and animated as she paced before a projector screen. Hargrove was a self-described progressive educator, a transplant from Portland who'd spent years railing against conservative politics on X and in academic journals. Her syllabus promised a critical lens on power structures, but her lectures often devolved into rants about the evils of capitalism, patriarchy, and most frequently, Donald Trump. She'd built a small but vocal following among the university's more liberal students who adored her fiery takedowns and her habit of wearing t-shirts with slogans like "Resist" under her blazers. Today her shirt read "Not My President," a relic from 2016 that she'd dusted off for the occasion. The lecture had started innocently enough, with Hargrove dissecting Locke's social contract theory, but as the clock ticked past 10:15 a.m., her tone shifted. She clicked to a slide titled "Modern Authoritarianism," featuring a grainy photo of Donald Trump at a podium, his face mid-shout. "Now," Hargrove said, her eyes glinting with mischief, "let's talk about how these ideas get perverted in practice. Take this clown, Trump, a man who turned democracy into a reality TV show, stomping on every principle Locke stood for: greed, ego, and zero accountability." The room stirred slightly, a few students exchanging glances. Barron's pen paused over his notebook, but his expression remained neutral, his jaw tight. He'd heard this before. Professors loved to use his father as a punching bag, but he'd learned to let it roll off him. Hargrove, however, wasn't done. She turned, her gaze locking onto Barron with the precision of a hawk spotting prey. "And speaking of accountability," she sneered, pointing a bony finger at him, "we've got a little Trump spawn right here in our midst. Barron, isn't it? Tell me, how does it feel to be the nepotism poster child for a fascist dynasty?" The classroom fell silent, the air thick with tension. 30 pairs of eyes swiveled to Barron, who looked up slowly, his blue eyes meeting Hargrove's with a calm that belied the fury inside him. A few students snickered nervously, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Hargrove pressed on, her voice rising with glee. "What's the matter, kid? Cat got your tongue? Or are you just used to daddy bailing you out of every mess?" Bumma's fingers tightened around his pen, the plastic creaking faintly. "Professor," he said, his voice low and steady, "I'm here to learn, not to be your punching bag." "Oh, please," Hargrove scoffed, rolling her eyes theatrically. "Spare me the martyr act. You Trumps think you're above everyone else, above the law, above decency. Your father's a fucking disgrace, and you're just the latest leech riding his coattails. What's it like knowing your whole life's a lie built on his bullshit?" The room gasped collectively, the profanity slicing through the academic veneer like a blade. A girl in the front row dropped her pencil, the clatter echoing in the stunned silence. Barron's face flushed, not with embarrassment, but with a white-hot anger he rarely let show. He stood, his height towering over the desks, his voice cutting through the room like steel. You don't know me, and you don't get to talk about my family like that. Hargrove laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Oh, I hit a nerve. Good, maybe you'll think twice before waltzing in here like some golden boy. Sit down, Trump, before I make you regret opening your mouth. But Barron didn't sit. He grabbed his backpack, slung it over one shoulder, and walked out, the door slamming behind him with a reverberating thud. The class erupted in whispers as Hargrove smirked, turning back to her slide. Well, that's one less privileged brat to deal with, she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Outside, Barron strode across the quad, his heart pounding, his mind racing. He wasn't the type to lose his cool. He'd inherited his mother's composure and his father's strategic mind. But Hargrove had crossed a line. This wasn't just about him. It was an attack on his family, his identity, everything he'd been raised to stand for. He pulled out his phone, his long fingers scrolling through his contacts. He wasn't going to let this slide. Not today. Barron found a quiet bench under a sprawling banyan tree, its gnarled roots curling into the earth like ancient fingers. He took a deep breath, the salty breeze cooling the heat in his cheeks, and dialed the first number. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Barron, what's up, kid? Eric Trump's tone was warm but tinged with concern. Barron rarely called during the day. Hey, Eric, Barron said, keeping his voice even. I need some advice. My professor just went off on me in class. Called Dad a disgrace. Swore at me in front of everyone. I walked out, but I'm not letting it go. Eric let out a low whistle. Jesus, what's her problem? You okay? I'm fine, Barron replied, though his grip on the phone tightened. Just pissed. She's a nutcase, full-on anti-Trump psycho. I want her gone. Eric paused, the gears turning. All right, here's what you do. Call Rudy Giuliani. He's still got contacts everywhere, especially in Florida. Tell him exactly what happened. Then call the university president's office. PBA is a private school, they don't mess around with bad PR. I'll text you the number. You've got this, Barron. Thanks, Eric, Barron said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. I'll handle it. Next, he dialed Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York and a longtime Trump family ally. Rudy picked up on the first ring, his gruff voice crackling through the line. Barron, how's my favorite Trump doing? Not great, Rudy, Barron said, cutting to the chase. My professor just humiliated me in class, swore at me, trashed Dad, the works. I need to know how to hit back. Rudy chuckled darkly. Sounds like a real piece of work. What's her name? Vanessa Hargrove. Political theory at PBA. Got it, Rudy said, his tone shifting to business. Here's the play. Document everything. Time, place, what she said. Record it if you can next time. Then call the administration and threaten a lawsuit, defamation, hostile environment, whatever sticks. PBA's Christian, they won't like a professor cursing out students, especially not a Trump. I'll make some calls too, lean on a few buddies in the state education board. She'll be out by the end of the week. Barron nodded, scribbling notes on his phone. Appreciate it, Rudy. I'm on it. His final call was to Dr. William Fleming, the president of Palm Beach Atlantic University. The line rang through to voicemail. Fleming was likely in a meeting, but Barron left a message, his voice calm but firm. Dr. Fleming, this is Barron Trump, a freshman in your political theory class. Today, Professor Vanessa Hargrove verbally attacked me in front of my peers, using profanity and insulting my family. It was unprofessional and unacceptable. I'd like to discuss this with you directly. I'll be following up with my legal team as well. Please call me back. He hung up, his pulse steadying. The wheels were in motion. By Wednesday, the campus of Palm Beach Atlantic University was ablaze with gossip, a frenetic hum of whispers and speculation rippling through the palm-lined walkways and sun-drenched courtyards. Word of Professor Hargrove's explosive outburst had spread like wildfire, igniting a fervor among students who'd taken to X with gleeful abandon, their fingers flying across screens to broadcast every salacious detail. Professor Hargrove just lost it on Barron Trump in class, called him a leech, and swore at him. Wild? One tweet read, its bold claim quickly racking up thousands of likes and retweets within hours. The digital echo chamber amplifying the drama with each passing minute. Another student, emboldened by the chaos, posted a blurry audio clip to the platform, the muffled sound of Hargrove's voice faintly audible through the static. "Your father's a fucking disgrace." The snippet was raw, unpolished, and damning, shared and reshared until it became a viral artifact of the scandal. The story didn't stay confined to campus chatter or X's frenetic feeds for long. Conservative media outlets, ever eager for a culture war flashpoint, pounced with predatory speed, spinning the incident into a full-blown spectacle. Headlines screamed across websites and chyrons. "Woke professor targets Trump's son in shocking classroom rant," blared one, while another, dripping with indignation, declared, "Barron Trump humiliated by liberal academic in front of peers." Each article painted Hargrove as a caricature of leftist excess, a purple-haired radical unleashed upon an innocent young man, and PBA, a private Christian university known for its pristine reputation, as a battleground in the nation's ideological wars. The pressure was mounting fast, a tidal wave of scrutiny crashing over the school's carefully curated image of piety and academic excellence. Administrators scrambled behind closed doors, fielding calls from donors, parents, and reporters, all while the online storm grew louder and more unforgiving. At precisely 2 p.m. that day, Barron Trump sat in Dr. Fleming's office, a wood-paneled sanctuary tucked away in the administrative building. The room was a testament to its occupants' long tenure. Heavy oak shelves lined the walls, groaning under the weight of leather-bound theology books and academic journals, while a collection of framed diplomas hung in neat rows, their gold seals glinting in the afternoon light. Crosses, some wooden, some brass, dotted the space. A quiet nod to PBA's evangelical roots, and a calligraphied verse from Proverbs 16:3 adorned the wall behind the desk. "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans." Fleming himself, a silver-haired man in his mid-60s, sat stiffly in his high-backed chair, his weary expression betraying the toll of the day's chaos. His tie, a muted shade of blue, hung slightly askew, as if he'd been tugging at it absent-mindedly during hours of tense meetings. "Barron," Fleming began, his voice measured but threaded with strain, "I've spoken to Professor Hargrove and several witnesses from your class. What she did was inappropriate, completely against our values here at PBA. We're investigating as we speak, and I want you to know we're handling this with the utmost seriousness." His hands rested on the desk, fingers interlaced, though a faint tremor betrayed his unease. Barron leaned forward in his chair, resting his elbows on his knees, his posture relaxed yet commanding, a young man who carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone twice his age. At 19, he was tall and lean, his features sharp and unmistakably Trumpian, though softened by youth. His voice, when he spoke, was steady and deliberate, cutting through the room's heavy air. "I appreciate that, Dr. Fleming, but it's not just inappropriate, it's personal. She's been targeting me all semester, with snide comments and biased grading, little digs about my family that she'd slip into lectures or write in the margins of my papers." This outburst, it was the breaking point. "I've got recordings from classmates who caught her rant, multiple angles, clear audio, and my family's lawyers are ready to step in if this isn't handled properly. I'm not here to cause trouble, but I won't be bullied either." Fleming paled slightly at the mention of lawyers, his hand rising to adjust his wire-rimmed glasses, with a tremble he couldn't quite suppress. The specter of the Trumped name loomed large, its wealth, its influence, its unrelenting legal machinery, and he knew the stakes had just escalated. "I assure you, Barron," he said, his tone tightening, "we're taking this seriously. We've suspended her pending a full review of the incident and her conduct. I'll personally keep you updated as we move forward." That evening, across campus, in a sterile, fluorescent-lit conference room, Professor Hargrove faced her reckoning. The disciplinary hearing convened at 6 p.m. thick with tension as she stormed through the double doors, her purple hair wild and uncombed, a chaotic halo framing her flushed face. Her eyes blazed with defiance, darting between the panel of deans seated at a long table, 5 stern figures in pressed suits and conservative dresses, their expressions ranging from disapproval to exhaustion. Hargrove didn't wait for an invitation to speak. "This is a witch hunt," she shouted, slamming her hands on the table with a force that rattled the water pitchers. "That little Trump brat set me up because he can't handle criticism. You're all caving to his family's money and power, spineless, every one of you." The deans exchanged glances, unflinching as Hargrove paced before them, her voice rising with each accusation. But the evidence against her was overwhelming, a deluge of testimony and documentation that left little room for doubt. Students had come forward in droves, some submitting typed statements via email, others delivering handwritten accounts, scrawled in hurried, indignant script, all corroborating Barron's version of events. Audio clips, captured on smartphones from various corners of the classroom, played on a loop through a small speaker on the table. Hargrove's voice, unmistakable as it hurled invective. "A leech, your father's a disgrace. Fucking entitled." The recordings weren't pristine, but they were damning, their raw authenticity cutting through her denials like a blade. Then there was Barron's formal complaint, a meticulously worded document submitted that morning, its pages crisp and professional. Attached to it was a letter from Rudy Giuliani's law firm. The letterhead alone a silent threat. The text was measured but pointed, hinting at potential litigation if the university failed to act decisively. A guillotine poised above the proceedings, its shadow darkening the room. Hargrove's protests grew more frantic as the hours wore on, her arguments unraveling into a tangle of conspiracy theories about Trump operatives and right-wing plants in her classroom. But the panel remained unmoved, their decision coalescing with each new piece of evidence. By Friday afternoon, the verdict was final. Hargrove's contract was terminated, effective immediately for conduct unbecoming of a faculty member. A phrase lifted straight from PBA's faculty handbook. She didn't go quietly. Escorted from the building by 2 security guards in navy polos, she raged across the parking lot, her voice echoing off the stucco walls as she clutched a cardboard box stuffed with her belongings. Books, a wilted potted plant, a chipped coffee mug. "Fascist conspiracies," she screamed, her words slurring into a howl. "Trump, tyranny, you'll regret this." Students watched from a distance, some filming on their phones, others whispering behind cupped hands as she climbed into her dented sedan and sped off, tires squealing against the asphalt. Barron, meanwhile, walked back to his dorm that same afternoon, the sun dipping low over the intracoastal waterway, casting golden reflections across the campus's manicured lawns and shimmering canals. He wore a simple navy hoodie and jeans, his backpack slung over one shoulder, blending into the stream of students heading to their evening routines. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he fished it out to see a text from his older brother, Eric. "Heard she's out, proud of you, kid. Dad says hi." A faint smile tugged at his lips as he tapped a quick reply, "Thanks, bro. Tell him hey back," before pocketing the device. The air was warm and briny, a breeze rustling the palm fronds overhead, and for the first time in days, a quiet satisfaction settled over him, steady and grounding. Hargrove had underestimated him, pegging him as just another rich kid. Too young, too soft, too privileged to push back against her venom. She'd been wrong. Barron wasn't just a Trump, he was a fighter, forged in a family where adversity was a crucible, not a defeat. Every snide remark, every unfair grade, every public insult had been a gauntlet thrown at his feet, and he'd picked it up without hesitation. In this classroom showdown, he'd proven himself, turning the chaos into a triumph that echoed far beyond PBA's gates. The victory tasted sweeter than he'd expected, sharp, bright, and wholly his own.